Welcome back to another edition of the Late to Grid podcast. This is your host, Bill Snow, and I'm so glad you're here because I have a really exciting guest to have. He has some great things to talk about. If this is your first episode, welcome to the Atomic Autosports Studio. This is where we record all kinds of great stories of folks that have been on track in the past to share their stories and inspiration about how folks can get more involved in grassroots racing. And if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And your involvement in helping us grow the podcast is awesome. But today I am joined by Devan Keeling, who is a time trial driver and a fast guy. We're going to get into that. But Devan, it's so great to have you on.
Good to be here, man. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's just get started. Yeah, thank you. Let's start by telling the listeners a little bit more about who you are, your background, your day job, and more about your motorsports background.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Devan. Most of the people in the Northeast Ohio region of the SCCA know me. That's where I'm primarily from and where I race most of the time. I'm 25, mechanical engineer. You run into a lot of engineers in this hobby, that's for sure. But I got into cars super young, but had no idea about the SCCA or NASA or any kind of amateur groups or anything like that. And then after my buddy took me to a track day in a car that I had just recently acquired, I caught the bug. And then from there, couple cars, actually one car later, we are currently with the Mustang that I have right now.
What was that first car that got you on track?
It was a 98 Cobra, so still a Mustang. I've been Stockholm syndromed into that chassis. Kind of like you and Neons, you just kind of stick to what you know. And the Mustang is a horrible car from the factory to drive fast, but everybody does it and everybody wants to make them faster. So there's a ton of companies that turn like that turd of a chassis into something that's quite potent, and there's all those kind of spec racers around that chassis. So that's what makes it a good platform for me, I think.
Yeah, and you just graduated a year and a half ago, 2 years ago?
Yep, did the bachelor's program at the University of Akron, and then I interned at Swagelok all through school and continued to work there.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. Very cool indeed. So that first track day, when was it? How long ago?
I want to say it was my sophomore year of college, I think. So what is that? That's almost 4 years ago.
Yeah. So in 4 years, you've really accomplished a lot. We're going to get to that. I don't want to let the listeners know about that fast lap we're going to talk about. So
sure,
but there's a teaser that'll keep them around.
Yeah.
So you did that first track day. How did you explain the progression? Maybe someone's listening to this that just says, I don't understand after I do a track day, then how do I get more involved? So after that first track day in that Cobra, what did you end up doing after that?
So my buddy Jack Sawyer, he works at Hawk Performance, and that's kind of how I got springboarded into those guys. Like, everybody thinks I work at Hawk when they first meet me. I don't work at Hawk. They're just really good friends, and those are the guys that I like hanging out with at the track. I would say they are like primarily my best friends in the paddock. So we'll get into those guys, but I was just kind of just having a casual conversation with someone in class about my car that I just bought. And then Jack pokes his head over my shoulder. He's like, "Hey, you got a car? What kind of car is it? You want it? Do you know what the SCCA is?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about, man? What are all these acronyms? And what's an HPDE and what's the SCCA?" And he was like, "I got a track day coming up or an HPDE weekend is what it was, at Shenandoah Circuit, in what state is that in? That's West Virginia, right?
I think it is.
I want to say that's where Summit Point Motorsports Park is. But so that was my first experience on track. Just bone stock 98 Cobra um, with Nittos, because that's what every Mustang has to have. And they're like, and I thought they were good tires. And you learn a lot your first little track weekend, and you learn that they're not good tires. But did did that weekend with an instructor and everything, and I found that I really liked the driving and the dynamics, and uh, just had a really good experience with that instructor. And then I just dove straight in after that. So my friend Jack, just after that HPDE, he had talked about, since the Hawk guys got him into track days, they told me about the Northeast Ohio region and how the time trials program work. So right after that track day, I started getting my car ready for time trials nationals, because that was just the time in the year that it was. So my first track day was at Shenandoah Circuit, which is arguably a pretty tight, windy, technical track, like a lot of turns, a lot of not a lot of high speed areas, but a lot of heavy braking. You know, they got the carousel in that, so I was hitting the carousel my first track day. And then the second track I went to right after that was like 24, 25 turns and absolute mayhem. Like, I was fried after that 4-day week. But the car held through, and I drove the entire time. So that was like my first. Yeah, then it was actually over. Like, the time trials schedule was over after that. So I had all winter to kind of like stew and plan for what I was going to do with that Cobra. So that was kind of like my first foray into what even the SCCA is, and how HPDEs work, and how time trials work. Because if I remember correctly, that HPDE weekend also had a time trials group as well. So I saw those guys like going out without instructors and getting the trophies at the end of the weekend and all that stuff. So and that was just kind of the natural progression. I think I've only done one other HPDE, actually. I've never done another one besides that first one. I just had that one instructor that really taught me how to like look ahead and where your hands go and how you shift and where. And he also had a Mustang. He had a newer one. So I jumped in his car, he jumped in my car, and we did that the whole weekend, and we worked really well off each other. And then the second HPDE that I was 2 years into the time trials at my second HPDE, and I just did it for fun and I was in advanced at that time. And the instructor actually told me to slow down at Nelson Ledges with my 98 Cobra. So that's always a story I like to tell, where I like that was a time where I didn't have a good time with that instructor, because I was like, we're not slowing down here, buddy. Like, that's not what we're doing. So maybe I overdrive, maybe I don't, but it seems to work out okay in the end.
Why do you think the instructor wanted you to slow down?
I'm not sure, because like we weren't fighting through traffic. We weren't like coming up on a lot of people or anything like that. But I had set my car up at the time where it was very like, you know how you see people drive Civics when they're set up really well, where you just kind of lift off the gas and you can like the whole thing just like pivots and you can steer it around. I had the car set up a lot like that, even and as a rear wheel drive car. I find that still the fastest way to drive, like getting a lot of rotation and then transferring the weight back on the rear tires with the gas. And I can do that pretty well most of the time. Not all the time. I'm not that good. But I think that style can kind of deter someone trying to sit in the passenger seat.
Yeah, they might not be used to it or might not like that feeling.
Yeah, I think I was just like a little bit too slidey. I was in time trial mode because that's the only mode I have,
Yeah.
and it was during an HPDE. So I'm not saying it's the instructor's fault. I'm saying it's my fault mostly.
Yeah.
But after that, I've just done like ride-alongs, and I've never had like another instructor really, unless it's like the guys from Hawk where we're going over like data and video.
Hmm.
I get a lot more out of that and watching my video versus another person's video than I do with actually someone in the car, because really when you're in the car, especially in the one that I have now, you can't really take like inputs like that um, and make it meaningful like instantly, I think.
So that's a great point about data and video. So when you're watching that video, what are you looking for? How are you learning from that?
It's mostly car placement, and I will try and watch videos of very different cars too. So, like in the Hawk paddock, we have Kubiak and Bickford, two very fast guys, usually top of their class, whatever they're competing in. And they're extremely, well, Bickford's car is extremely heavy and extremely high power. So he has sometimes a different line than what another person would take, and it's all about maximum like exit traction. So he maximizes that, where Kubiak is more along like my power to weight. Well, he's along more like my weight. I have a little bit more power, but the handling balance of our two cars are extremely similar when I watch him drive. So I compare and contrast the two, like where like a Corvette with no aero, stock motor, possibly like set up the right way. There's a lot of trail braking. There's a lot of rear end like rotation, whereas, and then I look at like a really heavy, really powerful car where it's a lot of straight line braking, a lot of like diamonds in the corners, you know, like straightening it out as much as possible. And then I like just kind of mixing and matching what I see different people do, and ultimately then just trying all that stuff. That's what I usually do during the practice sessions, and then I just look at my aim and see what the car likes more, pretty much.
So that is great advice, Devin. So listeners, if you are still in your, let's just call it the newbie period, and you're loving this on track stuff, and you're going through the websites looking at all these go fast parts, stop. Invest in some video capture, whatever it might be. It might be a Smarty Cam, might be a GoPro, it could be a camera attached to a catalyst, and start watching your video and others' videos, because that's going to get you faster than all of those bolt-on parts. Would you agree, Devin?
For sure.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that you spend money on should be number one, the registration to go to the track. That should be the first thing that you do, and you should get out there and do it. That should be the number one thing that you do. After that, if you have the basic tools like the tire pressure gauge and the torque wrench and the jack and all that stuff, and if you don't have that, everyone around you has it, and that's the main thing too. Where I'm talking to everybody in the paddock, looking to see their data, looking to see their video, and I'll just search the track on YouTube. I'll look up, you know, GT3 cars at VIR. I'll look up spec E36 at VIR. I don't care, and they're totally different. So, but the more input, the more information that you can capture, especially before you go for your first time, I think that's the most important.
Yeah, that's great advice. And one thing you hit on there is said another way is seat time. Just get laps. Just get your butt in the seat and just make laps.
Yeah. A lot of things that I see most commonly with newbies is they have a car that's built getting into the track like environment, and that's fine because I was the same way, because like I had just built street cars before I knew about the SCCA, and that was the car that I took. But if you're building something for the track without having the experience for the track, you're doing it backwards, because most of the stuff that you're buying it's gonna come off in the long run, I would say.
Yeah, and we learned that with the neons. So as we were experimenting, we went big sway bars, and then we dialed it back. We even ran no sway bar for a race in the front once.
Yeah.
And we're not involved in a cheap sport.
No.
So, so for somebody getting into it, don't go and buy all that stuff. Save your money for seat time.
No, because there's plenty of people in a clapped out Miata or Civic or Mustang or Camaro or whatever with no parts on it that have 200 treadwear tires, and they're faster than quote unquote pro touring cars.
Yeah.
I have seen before. You see things like that happen at like the Akron sports car clubs, autocrosses, and all kinds of stuff, and Motor State Challenge. All these beautiful cars built very well, close to 1,000 horsepower, beat by a Miata. Happens every day.
I love it. Miata's always the answer, right?
Yeah, it is.
Unless you have a Mustang.
The most fun I've had was ND Miata at NCM.
Yeah?
Somebody let me drive their ND Miata, and that was after I had my car with all the downforce and all the spring rate and like all that. So I literally just baha'd like the curbs, and I don't think the tire like came off the ground. Whereas my car, I actually have a picture that I sent you in that form where my car is about 2 feet off the ground in a, what do they call it, tabletop at NCM, because entirely too stiff to take that curb. But yeah, ND, I just like jumped it. It didn't matter. That was a good time.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about your season last year. You were running time trials. How did your season go last year?
It went very well. The best season that I've had so far. It keeps getting better, hopefully. But 2 years ago was when I got the current car that I have. We can talk about that later. But 2 years ago was me just like fixing something every single event, where because I had just bought the car, it was in pieces when I got it, just kind of threw it together and went to Gingerman that same week, I think, that I got it. So I was breaking power steering pumps and alternators, and I don't have the right rear gear in the car, and it's shifting weird, and that was like my first year with the car that I have currently. And year 2 last year was when I like shored everything up and got it balanced, got it handling, got it reliable, and so I could just pound on it. And so from having the ridiculous car that I could now fully bring out, I won't even say fully, bring out maybe 70% of its true potential with driving it the way that I am now. We took the U1 championship in the SCCA OH&PA time trial championship, which is the fastest overall class. So we don't keep track of like total time overall. It was a per class competition, but I'd want to say, considering I had the lap records at the 2 tracks that the competition was held at, I'd like to say I have the fastest car overall in that competition, as well as the Ultimate 1 class, which is the fastest class in the time trial rulebook.
So you have the fastest lap at Nelson Ledges and Pitt Race for U1.
Pitt Race is official.
Yeah.
They are not sure what the fastest time trial lap in competition is at Nelson Ledges. Just because I've talked to Aaron Kine, he's a good friend of everyone at Nelson. We all know him, Stupid Fast Tire. His TA2 Trans Am, why is it? I just said, it's a Camaro, not a Trans Am. Trans Am is the name of the series that he used to compete in, but it's a TA2 car, and I know the fastest he's ever been around Nelson is a 105.5. So the fastest that I went around Nelson last year was 106.6.
Mm-hmm.
So that 105.5 is the fastest lap that I've ever heard of at Nelson. I know like an open wheel car can do like a sub 1 minute there.
Yeah.
I haven't delved deep into like the SCCA record book or anything, but I think I have the production car based lap record at Nelson Ledges.
That's awesome.
I'm hunting for Aaron's time. I want it eventually.
Yeah.
If I had a tire sponsor and had some A7s, might be able to knock that down. But you know.
Oh, that's worth a couple seconds.
Yeah, money don't grow on trees, and I've ran takeoffs ever since I've had that car.
Yeah.
From Aaron, so thank you, Aaron.
Yeah. What in U1, is that open tire or does that have to be 200 treadwear?
That is any tire you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're doing A7 takeoffs?
No, I'm doing the IMSA tire, the Pirelli DH. So
Gotcha.
Aaron gets a lot of those from like Porsche Club guys, and they're homologated size, so they all come the same size. So they're pretty readily available and a lot cheaper than buying A7s or a true Time Attack R compound. So it's entirely a constraint of just my budget to run those tires, but I like the tires that I run now because they are within a second or two of the top dog slick R compound, but I can drive the whole session. My car is not one of those like glass cannon Time Attack builds where it will break every 5 minutes. So I actually like staying out for the entire session, and my entire excuse me, my last lap is usually my fastest lap, just building that temperature up over time, which is the exact opposite of the like mentality that time trials is supposed to have. But that's just how it works with my car, how I drive it, and how I have it set up currently. Because yes, I do like the ultimate lap time, but I do like driving it as much as I possibly can. So yeah, it's just a conflict of interest, and I'm taking like the middle road, pretty much.
What else do you have planned for this season? Or actually, I guess I'm sorry, we're still talking about 2022. So that's awesome. Again, congratulations on those lap times. That is impressive. And to think about it, I mean, you're only 4 years into this. We talked about earlier.
Yeah,
I mean, that's some awesome progression.
Yeah, it was a big skip, like from going from that 98 Cobra to the 96 GT that I have currently. But that was just, it literally just like fell into my lap, and it was everything that I was going to do to the 98. And I was like, oh, here's what I already want at a third of the price. So,
yes,
you know, why not sell my current car, recoup half the costs of my new one, and don't have to worry about building it or taking it to a cage builder or all the crazy things that go into building a race car, you know?
I'm always a fan of buying, not building.
Yeah, it was just like it was a perfect situation where it was in just enough pieces where I was sure that it was going to work when I got it working, but it you know, it wasn't 100% there. It was like buying a house that needed paint and carpet. Like you save like tens of thousands of dollars if you buy a house that needs paint or carpet. But then just putting that in, it doesn't take nearly as long as building a house yourself, pretty much.
Yeah.
That would also be my next piece of advice to anyone that gets into the HPD time trial crowd and really gets a bug for it. You don't have to mutilate your street car if you want to keep it your street car. Find somebody's broken down project and clear out your garage and get ready. That would
Good
be
advice.
That would be my other bit of advice.
Any other 2022 highlights?
Car actually doesn't have headlights, so
yeah,
don't have any of those. No, the Ohio PA time trial competition that you guys covered in your last episode. I listened to that and it was a good one. Um, what you talked about there, that was probably the highlight of last year's season. I did not participate in the Ultimate Track Car Challenge uh, just because it was a conflicting weekend with SCCA schedule. But now the SCCA schedule is in conjunction with Ultimate Track Car Challenge at the end of this year at NCM. So I'm gonna do that again. I did that in 2021 at VIR, which was a lot of fun. But I did not get to do that for 2022, and now I get to come back for 2023. So I'm stoked for that.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit more about 2023 then. What else do you have planned?
Right now